One of the biggest struggles that we have in adopting AI is we don't understand AI. There's a lot of ways around it, and if you know how to use the tool, you know how to make it work for you. But the biggest problem here is people are hallucinating about what AI can do. If you look at AI today, who's the one producing it? To a normal person, do I know the AI myself? Did I create it myself? Or did someone else create it?
The people who created and coded this
Yes.
don't behave the way that we behave.
And that's the real fear, right? That's a real deep down feeling that people have. It's not about AI itself. Do they trust the people who created the AI?
Where does that leave us? Some people talk about the future of AI, others shape it. Meet Ethan Seow, a futurist, cybersecurity expert, and the co-founder of C4AIL, the Center for AI Leadership, an organization at the forefront of AI education, governance, and cybersecurity. Ethan, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we carry on, I really want to find out a little bit about the vision and the mission.
So, Center for AI Leadership was formed as a partnership between me, Yorg, and Manu. The three of us came together because we were concerned about the same things around AI, which was that people were not understanding the impact of Gen AI as well as the risk of Gen AI. And then what we saw was a really critical part of it, which is leadership is what's needed to solve it. When we talk about leadership, we're talking about people who are willing to take on the responsibility as well as the accountability to adopt or choose not to adopt AI, but with strategic knowledge and good decision making. That's what leadership really is to us, right? And so as you ask this question, my favorite statement around this is our little bit of a motto that was created during our launch day, where a friend of mine came up to me and go, I have a motto for you. While humanity worries about AI and its hallucinations, we address humans' hallucinations about AI.
Let me just dial that back here. Humans' hallucinations about AI.
It's really funny, right? Because one of the biggest struggles that we have in adopting AI is we don't understand AI. In a Rand Corporation research last year, more than 80% of AI projects have failed in the last 2 years because, number one factor, leadership does not understand what AI can do, can't do, and the impact of AI. So therefore, when they start these projects, they are having hallucinations or imaginations about what AI can do. And the reason why we use the word hallucinations is because one of the most common words we use to describe the incapability of using AI for enterprise use cases is because it does a lot of what we term as hallucinations. Hallucinations is what you saw during some of the launches where it hallucinated certain information about key figures. Or like for example, when you ask a question about what is healthy eating, and one of the answers by Google Gemini on Google was eating rocks because it's 0 grams of sugar or calories.
And it has the minerals inside as well.
Yes, absolutely. Of course. And that's the thing about hallucinations, right? Hallucinations is this really interesting concept where we think that, AI does not know how to actually talk to us. So we call it hallucinations. It tells us facts that are not existent. There's a guy who tried to use AI to come up with legal justifications for a case, only to find out the two major cases that they were referring to did not exist in the world. So there were a lot of these different things where we call hallucinations. But the truth is, AI's hallucinations is and likely to be an unsolved problem for quite a while. When AI generates knowledge, it's finding correlations of different things, and it's not a fact checker, right? So that's where it's very different. So it has a bunch of hallucinations, a bunch of issues in the front. In the same way, if you look at it, humans have the same amount of hallucinations when you ask them a question and they are too afraid to say they don't know. So I mean, ideally we have Gen AI that would be able to tell us, I actually don't have this information, let me search for it. Versus what we happen today is AI sounds really confident and tells you, here's the answer. And we call it hallucinations, right? Yeah. So this is the thing that we keep on describing as the biggest issue of why people are not adopting AI or it's not very useful because it hallucinates. Well, actually, there's a lot of ways around it. And if you know how to use the tool, you know how to make it work for you. But the biggest problem here is people are hallucinating about what AI can do. And when we say that is because they don't understand and don't know enough about AI, they're imagining a bunch of things about AI and therefore assessing it with that kind of slant.
So what I understand about AI in the first place is that it will gather all the information as long as it's been out there on the internet, try to assemble these informations based on the questions that you asked it.
Yes.
So whatever the question outcome that you kind of desire, as long as you phrase it the correct way, it's going to assemble to answer your question to make you right?
So yes and no, right? So this is the humanistic angle of looking at AI if we were to anthropomorphize it, right? However, it doesn't really function the way that humans work. So let me separate the difference between Gen AI and traditional AI. First, we need to understand that ground first, then we can go into Gen AI and hallucinations. So in traditional AI, we like to use this thing called confidence scores.
Confidence scores?
Yes. So usually you say confidence level, confidence scores, right? So if you watch CSI, which is Crime Scene Investigation, a really popular series, they talk about, 98% match between this fingerprint and that fingerprint. Notice that, yeah, statistics. So it's always about confidence match. The person who makes the decision that this is true is still making the decision. There's always a human in the loop. When we talk about this, is because AI was very often designed to not to make decisions, but to give us, hey, I notice this pattern. It's trying to tell you that there's a pattern, and I'm giving you these suggestions. So one of the most common use cases that we talk about traditional AI and ML, or machine learning, is that recommendation systems on Amazon, for example. It looks at the patterns of all the people who has bought all the similar items and gives you a recommendation. Who makes the decisions?
Me.
Yeah.
I'm not swayed in any different direction yet.
Of course, for marketing purposes, we know that, swaying people. But then again, it is also relevant for you.
Yes.
So it is all down to pattern matching, exactly like what you described. Gen AI is a little bit of a different beast altogether. So when the transformer model first came up, it was designed to transform the way that we work with AI and ML. So the most important breakthrough came with this paper written by Google back in 2017 called Attention is All You Need. So this particular article is a seminal article that started the transformation of ChatGPT and all the different models that we have today. For the longest time when AI was looking at words, it would look at one word by one word by one word by one word. If you ever use a smartphone in the old days, you realize that we have this challenge where when I'm typing a message and I just click on the next suggested word, it eventually start looping or start speaking gibberish all the way through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there used to be a challenge in my childhood when whenever we type to each other and does the autofill for the next word, it starts repeating the same words over and over again and over and over again. So this was a very good exercise for us to see, that's what natural language processing was, which means I can only identify by the previous word and the previous word and the previous word. And so it will keep finding patterns from there. It cannot take the whole sentence and turn it into context. So the reason why we use these words like context, window, and all these kind of things comes from that. So if you understand that it only could look at the previous word, the difference between Gen AI and normal AI is Gen AI looks at the whole context. So when we use this word called context windows, when we talk about number of tokens, it's the number of words or the number of characters available for me to input into the system for it to read and understand. So it reads the whole thing again. So what it means is, whenever I'm talking to Gen AI, it reads every single word I say as a whole bunch of patterns. So when we talk about 3 billion parameters, it means by this number of words, I have all the different parameters that I've created to find the patterns within this. So if you think of one parameter as almost one dimension. Yeah. So if you look at that, it finds all these patterns, it looks at the probability of the next word and the next word and the next word and correlates all of that according to all the previous words you have said. So most of this is the massive hard work done by all these different companies where all the data scientists sat down, chose the right answers from the trained data and say that these are the right answers. So this is where the higher probability goes. And then as it took all the information from the internet, scraped all through the different years, I know that there's stories of people downloading troves of all the books in the world and uploading it to the LLM for it to be trained. This is where it gets its knowledge and all the correlations. So it finds all the information in there, finds all the patterns within it. As a person says, this is the right answer, eventually it starts finding these patterns and reproduces those patterns over and over again. Of course, in the last few years, the technology has improved even more because we've been building around these large language models or these particularly trained models such that it improves its efficiency, meaning we even change what goes in there. So for example, when I type this sentence of like, give me the best place to eat in this particular country. Now, the Gen AI will actually go into a reasoning model of like, hey, you're this kind of person in this country, what kind of food would you like, da 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 da. But this is actually created by people adding on top of the LLM. That's at the back end. So it's all pattern matching. It is all down to history and more patterns that we've layered one on top of the other. and it creates what we see as Gen AI today. So when we talk about this, it is pattern matching, but it's pattern matching on history and not on necessarily the context in which you're giving it. So when I say this is, if I'm using an AI for the first time and it doesn't know anything about my context, and I say, what's the best place to eat food in this particular country, it's going to give me all the recommendations online. But if it doesn't know that you like chili, doesn't know that you can't eat pork, or you the list of different things, you don't give those factors, it cannot give anything to you down that path that is customized to you. If you have a better understanding of how AI works, it is very much pattern matching. It looks like magic, but it really is taking the history of humanity and throwing it back at you and finding the best way to present it today. And that's really where we are today. Right now, the biggest reason why this is so important is because it recreates human knowledge work. When we use human knowledge work, it means books, writing, images, videos. All those different things are human creative knowledge work. Those are done with a human mind to be able to recreate this thing. I mean, music generation as well. So one of the major things that I like to talk about in this area is when you create all these materials, I address it as syntax, not semantics. So what I mean is, as a music producer myself, when I generate something off Suno, which is the music production app that creates music according to what you ask for, I don't get a list of faders that I can adjust each volume and mix down each of the instruments and build it up from scratch. It gives me a final form. So when we talk about diffusion models, so it gives white noise and reduces all the different parts of the patterns to create the sound that it will finally create at the end. But it does not think by the pattern of, I put this instrument and that instrument in. It just goes, this is what the overall sound sounds like. So it's very end product driven, not process driven. And this is where we have to understand that that's why Gen AI functions very differently from us. So as a end product driven country like Singapore, should I say this? As an end product driven
right now,
yeah. So as people who are very focused on end products, we will only see the end product go, wow, this is magic. Because, most of the time, by the time you are listening to a track on the radio, it's been polished. It's many recording takes, right? If you know about vocal recordings, very often the singers, there's a famous story about how Taylor Swift sang the same line 8 times, and that's what created the final track. And that kind of work does not happen in front of your face. And we only take the end product, go, wow, sounds amazing, but we don't know the amount of work it takes. What AI has done is shortcut all those parts and created an end product for us.
which is also very interesting because as polished as Gen AI has been able to then just pump out content after content, it then understands that we like that polish and it gives us exactly that polish that we want, right? When you were talking about how it was all based on pattern recognition and what the history has provided, history is written by the winners.
Yes.
So our history and what we have online is extremely biased.
Yes.
Wouldn't you say then that it is now more important than ever to actually design and publish the kind of humanity that we want to put out there so that AI will be able to then pick this up instead of the history that's been written by winners? It really got to my attention that if you want to find out anything on the internet, there are as much content published on what is for or against.
They're not equal though.
I mean, look at
The loudest voice, man.
yeah, it's true, the loudest voice, but there are enough voices out there to even go up against something as simple as climate change. There's for and against, and I think there's equal parts and equally loud in both camps.
Yep.
Which is very scary. So which one is AI or Gen AI going to then filter from? And this is all according to that person that sat there and took the time and effort because he cared, or did he figure out and tell and train the AI model which one to pay attention to?
So it's interesting you're saying that because there's literally an article called Gen AI is weird. Weird is the acronym for like Western educator. I can't remember the rest of the acronyms. Yeah. But one of the major things about this is it's already biased. And it's already verbose, meaning the people who chose these answers were people who were choosing more descriptive answers, because a lot of the people who were reading this were, your typical data scientists who are more educated in a certain manner and preferred a certain type of reading style and a certain type of sentencing. So the preference is already brought into the picture. And there's already built-in biases. You know the story of the Microsoft AI that was supposed to be a Twitter bot back in like 2010s? Yeah, so with Microsoft created a bot that took all the information on Twitter and created an account that just wrote according to that and got people to respond to it. Within, I think, hours, it started becoming a racist, bigoted, slur-throwing machine. Because you start realizing that actually, majority of what's available on Twitter is...
They're mirroring it.
Yes, they're mirroring those exact things. So if you look at it, right, humanity has always had this problem. We actually curated the best of it for most of our platforms. If you look at it, most of the news articles needs to be polished, needs to be fact-checked, needs to be whatever. The rest of the world doesn't do that. If you look at your WhatsApp messages nowadays, the amount of not true information that we get as people is generally quite a lot, right? So if you look at it, right, the truth is humanity has never cared about facts. Has never cared about opposite points of view. We like to confirm our beliefs.
Who dares wins?
Yeah, who dares wins. Who wins wins. Full stop. Nothing else.
Shouts loudly, loud enough gets the attention.
Yeah. So, as in, there has been significant progress in the last 100 years, post World War II, where we tried to go fact-based. We tried to go in a certain manner. But obviously with, certain shifts in culture and the comfort of, peace for so many years, we've lost track of looking for what's evidence-based and what's facts-based. And we look for what, makes us feel good. And obviously with social media, that becomes heightened because it keeps on reinforcing what we have. So what you're saying is exactly true, right? So the winner writes the stories. And actually, to be honest, to begin with, our geographical and historical studies has always shown us according to the perspective of the winners and never the losers. So already the information is biased. Can we do something about it? Right now it's rather hard. The key question here we have is, can you use it to your advantage? So I hear you about that point. It is definitely a point that we need to think about because biases is a big issue. Sadly, it's already trained into the models because humans are biased. But more importantly is, when you understand how the tool works, you know how to use it to your advantage. GenAI is a creation mechanism. That's why generative. So it's not a confidence score system. It's not a judgment system. It's not a what's the pattern within here. It is a system that imitates human knowledge work. So they function very differently.
Okay, well, let's put it into a context that we can really just get our teeth into.
So talk about vision transformers. So vision transformers is, one of the coolest technologies that we have today, where you can take a photo of something and it can tell you the food, all these kind of different calories and things like this. In OCR technology, we've been trying to get, turn PDFs into words.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So that's one of the major things. The vision transformers, because of GenAI's vast libraries, is able to do it a lot better. On certain grounds, we're taking a lot more compute, of course. So it takes a lot more power and everything. But see, when OCR does it, it gives you a confidence score as well. It gives you I think these are the words and this is where it is. If you look at how we look at this vision transformers, very often they give us, I'm identifying this thing, you still have to check it. Gen AI just goes, this is that.
Gen AI
Yes.
you that this is that.
Yes, because what it does is it generates an answer. It's not giving you a confidence score. So this goes, I notice this pattern. The percentage chance that this is true by statistics is that, by my training history. And so, what most people do is they try to make it as high as possible, up to 90+%, all these kind of different things. So it only gives you an answer that, it only gives you the characters or the answers that goes above 90%. So it gives you, here's the information. Gen AI, on the other hand, even if this is 20%, the fact that it has an answer, it will just tell you this is the answer. Because of the nature of it.
Okay, so how well your Gen AI will perform would basically be reflective of how well you train it in the first place.
Yes, but
How well you craft those questions leading into your answers.
okay, the problem with general purpose technology. So the difference between this and traditional AI ML is traditional AI ML, we call it expert systems most of the time. So they're designed for specific use cases. And ideally, if you look at it today, a mixture of traditional AI ML together with GenAI is a very, very powerful set of tools. Because you can sieve out all the information of performance and confidence levels and sieve out all the things before you send it to GenAI. The reason why GenAI is scary is because it will give you an answer regardless of its confidence level. Because it's designed to just generate. Does it make sense? It's like, if you have to give an answer, you can give any answer, you just give an answer even if you don't know the answer.
It's just like your intern that you just get in that just wants to score points with the big boss. That's like, no, I have the answer. Like, this is it.
That's exactly what Keith Carter describes GenAI to be. A really good intern. Very knowledgeable intern.
There we go. We have to get Keith Carter in.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're watching. But I think that this is problematic to say the least, but there is also a lot of people that have been trying to get the word out on how you trained your AI, or rather your Gen AI, and just, make sure you scope it out. Maybe give certain examples based on what you've done before.
So the thing is, the problem with this kind of scoping comes with a general purpose technology is that the more you limit it, the less it can do. So the more guardrails you put into it, the less productive it is because it cannot go everywhere else.
So then people want to take away the guardrails? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. If you download Grok 2 or Grok 3 now, or you just download DeepSeek and you download some of these LLMs, you can remove the guardrails and just use it however you want. The effectiveness of it is still questionable only because of hallucinations, misalignments, all those different elements that are inbuilt into the GenAI itself. The key part about this is, as with any general purpose technology, effectiveness, efficiency, and all the kind of things is not the goal.
You just get the work done, is it?
It kind of just generates what it wants. It's supposed to just generate something for you. It just finds the patterns, it goes back into the history, it takes it out, here you go. Right? It's not designed as a technology to go, this is, I'm not sure if I should give it to you. Let me give you multiple answers and maybe you can, it doesn't do that unless you prompt it to. So here comes the best part. I just recently started using Claude as a therapist.
Okay. And how has he been doing?
He's great. I mean, so I have a therapist that I work with because I like to reflect upon myself and get more emotionally aware along the way. But sometimes you just need a quick, snap of everything. And what better than, something that's already on your phone, already on your laptop, you can just talk to it. Once you know how to do the system prompts, you know how to do all the different elements, you know how to use the information to your favor. That means it still hallucinates because it would make up some knowledge about me. It would assume a bunch of things about me. When I use it to reflect. I don't use it to give me answers. And that is the most effective way of using GenAI for now. I mean, there are a lot of other use cases where I've seen companies turn it into a very good system to turn gibberish data into something useful for humans. That's one of the biggest use cases. So if you look at this, right, there are a lot of use cases that it can be used if we understand the tool. Okay. But the biggest problem is that we think of it as it should be like the person who has all the knowledge under the sun and give me the right answers all the time. The value of GenAI is the ability to generate. That's something that traditional AI didn't have. And so I would describe it as, while AI could do 90% of the work and the humans still need to make the last 10%, GenAI is really great in creating the last 10% without necessarily caring about the first 90%. You get what I'm talking about? Yeah, the first 90%, which is the work, the pattern recognition, the cleaning of data, all these different works, the research that we humans usually do, GenAI has done all of that, so it just generates all for you. But it doesn't check whether this is relevant, this is useful, or the confidence score of all this. It just generates because that's its role. At the end of the day, like anyone else, right? Like, for example, I'm good at certain things. You put me into an administrative job, I will die and I'll make a ton of mistakes. And I will admit to that. The thing is, the moment I know my flaws, I don't work in the environments where I have to do it all the time. I can do administrative stuff once in a while, but most of the time, I need to do the strategic stuff, the thinking stuff, the talking stuff, like now. But if I'm not self-aware, or as a tool, people are not aware of my strengths and weaknesses, they're going to use me wrongly.
Yes. as is Gen AI.
My favorite way of looking at humanity has always been recognizing that we are often trying to abdicate ourselves of a responsibility that we have. The idea of retirement, fire, retire early, and the dream of not having responsibilities in life.
Oh, I know it.
If you notice, right, most of the conversations around Gen AI
It's about relieving us of our work that we need to do.
and the responsibility we need to take to make decisions.
So we want to relinquish our responsibility and just give it all up to a robot?
A lot of people want to do that, whether or not they admit to it. They might argue otherwise, but if you see their words and you hear them talk, you realize that, hey, you are imagining a lot of things about AI and what it can do for you, rather than trying to use it as a tool. Whereas I have a very different viewpoint, which is use it as a tool because it's a really powerful tool. If you look at most jobs today,
Okay.
what is the biggest frustration in terms of hiring today?
Companies are using AI to filter CVs and not giving anybody that doesn't hit those matches with those keywords a proper chance.
So, why do you think they do that?
It's too many CVs to go through.
Yes, but so I have a counter to that.
Yeah.
Imagine we're able to go, hey, Gen AI, can you sieve out all the character traits of all these different people? All the different kinds of strengths, what kind of experience they have, and organize it in this format for me that is understandable to me as a person. And then I make the decision from there. That means 150 people, but I see all the traits and go like, huh. Or I create psychometrics that allows me to figure out, okay, whether this person is a good match for the company on top of their other things. But what happens is that what people want is the Gen AI to give them a final answer. That means give me the top 3 people. Versus me going through the 150 people and looking at, okay, so let me see the overview. What are the traits I'm looking at the most? What are the most common? What are the things I'm looking for the most? And then see whether I can CV it out from this list. So again, right, there have been many ways where you can do this. So one of my favorite conversations around this is I have a chat with a good friend of mine who is a really good hospitality recruiter. He told me that the most important trait as a recruiter is knowing what the hiring manager wants, knowing how to sieve out the experience of the person, meaning if you're in the hospitality sector, the general manager of Hotel 81 is different from the general manager of Shangri-La.
Yes.
The CV picker can differentiate the two.
Of course. Because they have no context between what those two hotels actually are like or who they service.
Precisely. And we were actually supposed to create a whole labeling system and all these kind of things for the back end to be able to make this work. Okay. But I mean, now Gen AI, it's possible to do this a lot faster, right? But once you remove the value of this knowledge, which is what most people do, they want a machine that does all the work for them. They don't have to think. They just need to interview the top 3 candidates.
I'm sure there are many hiring agencies and even LinkedIn is doing this on the back end and then train the AI to be able to understand what we are actually looking for.
So remember, this is not a zero-sum situation. While we are doing this and improving the system, people are using Gen AI to create perfect CVs, inputting words into the CVs, turning white text to control the AI from the other end. So that's why I'm looking at it very different. Cybersecurity, I need to look at both ends of the picture, the response. So in SWOT analysis, right, weakness, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats. Yes. But I still need a human in the loop because I need to be updated on what's the latest trends. I need to know what's relevant. And that keeps me relevant today. When I use an AI to support me through this process, I know how to milk the information out. So what's really interesting is I realize is the more I know how to use AI, the further I feel from a lot of the date formats of doing things. When I use the word date formats, meaning staring at an Excel sheet, looking for all the different things, now I know how to utilize it for my process information faster. And at the same time, I'm also actively working on, am I getting the right information? Am I understanding what's going on? And am I able to utilize this information well for me? And can I reproduce this for other things?
What you're actually trying to say is the deeper that you get into discovering and analyzing and figuring out how AI actually works, now you understand where AI is lacking, which is the cultural nuance, understanding what is trending at this point in time, what people actually identify as threat or risk or favorable. and perhaps take on a role more strategically as the operator, the strategist, and the designer?
What I've learned is like Nordic countries, certain European countries, because of their high minimum wage, a lot of companies have been incentivized to automate a lot of the things that they do. So people have been elevated in terms of work status to have to do more management related stuff, all this kind of stuff. The more tools you have, the more humans are supposed to do more higher value stuff.
Correct.
The problem we have is, if you look at what our culture currently is mostly made of, is a lot of body shops. So very often the work that is done, we call it warm bodies, right? In a lot of companies. So if you think about it, right, warm bodies is also the result of big corporations wanting to just put a person there rather than because it's of high value to the company.
Your headcount. But I think more and more these days, that's the opposite of what's going on, right? It's like you are using
With AI.
automation, more AI, Gen AI to then take over a lot of these menial jobs.
Well, DBS just announced that they're laying off 4,000 of the contract work.
Yes.
And temporary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's available on the news. Due to AI. The question here is, that's why we go back to Center for AI Leadership.
Yes.
Are we going to create leaders? I'm here to create leaders. I'm here hoping that you can be a leader too. That each of you out there who's listening to this podcast right now is going to be a leader, so that we have a better humanity together using AI to support us.
At the end of the day, it is all about creating the leaders and grooming them to teach them how to use the tools that we're actually in possession of at this point in time. And thanks to Deepfake, making it extremely
Affordable.
accessible, we're not taking this opportunity to then help us grow.
So I find it really interesting, right? Because as we're talking about this, I'm remembering the fact that self-leadership was the term that I used to describe a few of my startups in the past. Because I realized that the thing that I was struggling with is self-leadership. As in, I felt like I was trying to figure out and understand self-leadership. I found that I couldn't learn it from most places. I mean, it's only in recent knowledge, people like Tony Robbins, Simon Sinek, all this kind of motivational talks. But if you really dig deep into it, we are really talking about leading your life your way, not being, succumbing to the environments around you. And that's what leadership is, right? And self-leadership is, hey, I'm comfortable with me and I'm going to take this step and I'm going to take it there. Again, I'll go back to this. The opposite of this is giving up the responsibility and handing it over to a machine.
I mean, we're going to have a lot of people drop off the podcast at this very point in time because we're going to talk about responsibility and taking self-responsibility in the first place, right? I understand this to be one of the many pain points that we're actually going through, because there is a huge fear, this lingering fear that's looming over our heads, right? It's like, what if we don't know, right? And I was just sharing this the other day at a talk about the IDGs. Now, we all know about the UN SDGs, right? And in 2021, I found out about the UN IDGs, which is Inner Development Goals. And the IDG,
I've never even heard of it.
And it's really interesting because the main area or main aim, right, is to build leaders, touch on your emotional intelligence, right, awareness, self-awareness, and empathy. And this is in response to the fact that we were going through this really difficult global trial with the pandemic, and everybody just being isolated and not knowing exactly what to do, to try to just work on yourself, to be aware, more self-aware, to build leaders so that we can actually give from our overflow.
Yeah.
I thought this is very important because they also made it a point that this is essential for us to then be able to use as a foundation so that we can work on the broader, UN SDGs. A lot of people don't see that. They're just looking hey, can you please tell me what to do? Right?
Give me the answers, please. Thank you.
I know, but it is coming from a place of fear and scarcity, because right now, if there is so much that we can offer and there's so little that we know how to do, it is operating from a place of scarcity. Yeah. Gary just talked to me recently, and we spoke about this, the idea of urban poverty. Which is scarier than just, poverty.
Because outright poverty is, at least you live on a farm, you can, grow off the land and do other things.
You know where you stand, you know what you can do. You can, go and fish.
Yeah.
Right.
You do what you need to survive.
Exactly. But, urban poverty, we don't have that luxury.
I mean, you touch on a really interesting point because that's literally the title of my TEDx talk. Scarcity mindset.
So, scarcity and abundance mindset has been exactly where we are kind of breaking this ground from,
Yes.
with the AI being the answer to our prayers.
Okay, so number one, we don't understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you actually read the book and you read what happened afterwards and why we have the form that we have, one of the major factors that we lack today is intimacy. And I use the word intimacy, I mean emotional intimacy with self and with others. The feeling of being understood. Right? So that's actually the most basic way of describing it. Babies die within the first year if they have never been touched by a human. So it's clearly a physical need. Yes. So I think this is one of the major parts that we don't realize, that emotional intimacy does not exist very much in our life today, because we are always worried about what people think of us, what this person thinks, and all these different stakes. I mean, this is for me also one of the biggest things, because a lot of my issues, growing up, a lot of my limitations of different things I was doing was related back to the fact that I was worried that somebody thought of me a certain way. Yep. So, and that's a very normal thing, especially in Asian cultures, where we have this fears. Even though very often, if you take the action and you do the things that you want to do, very often there's no real effects afterwards. It's this fear of unknown that we have. It's because we actually lack the composure. And I use this because a good friend of mine came out with this in his sports psychology. Before you can get confidence, there's 5 C's. Number 1 is composure. Number 2 is concentration. Then you get confidence.
Okay.
Then you get, he uses what called culpability, or combinations of all the different skills. And the last but not least is cooperation, which is teamwork.
Yes.
1 is the hardest, because composure, while most of us live our lives by our emotions, and I say this as a psychologically trained person, most people don't want to feel bad, but they don't know how to get themselves out of feeling bad.
Elaborate.
When I feel sad, I spend time going, why am I feeling sad? Okay, so this is just to give where I am today, versus where I used to be. So where I am today is when I'm feeling sad, I'm going, what's sadness trying to tell me? Why am I feeling bad? What is the struggle here? Is it that I'm physically tired? Is it this? There might be many reasons as to why I feel bad. It could be also low blood sugar because I just had a sugar rush. So there's so many things. I met so many people who goes, I just don't want to feel bad. So they'll find a candy, they'll find something to soothe themselves rather than find the source of that pain. So composure comes as a result of managing our emotions. And composure only comes when we feel anxiety, we know how to address it. When we feel sad, we know how to address it. So we can be composed before we can go to concentration and confidence. And let's talk about this. Fear is the opposite of confidence. Confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is doing it anyway, even with the fear. Yeah. So when you are one-dimensional in your thought processes about this, you will always go down that path. When you're multi-dimensional in your way of thinking, because you have the right intimacy, you feel understood, therefore you have the confidence to voice yourself, hear your own words, look at it objectively, manage your emotions, before you move to the next level of being able to concentrate and therefore learn things fast, understand things on a complex level, before you gain confidence, and therefore you start socially interacting with other people and handle the complexities of today. So when we look at it in this format, this is what's needed in humans to be able to utilize AI. Because one of my favorite experiences was when I was helping some people learn how to use AI, I realized that they copy-paste a set of questions direct into AI. I'm like, have you tried giving an opposite point of view? They're like, for what? I'm like, so that you can add more information and see what are the different ways you can look at it. And then they're like, okay, let me try. After they started trying, they went, oh, so the more perspectives I add in, the better it gets. I'm like, so it's really funny when I experience this over and over again. AI is a reflection of humanity, like the Twitter bot that started spouting slurs and bad language because it's a reflection of humanity. But if you want to bring out the best, you can.
I think this is extremely relevant because we're talking about like why people do not want to commit and do not want to try in the first place, right? There is
Yep.
this gap. There is this gap that people are afraid of moving or jumping over, right? From where they are to where they want to be. And they always want to feel confident first before they get there. The funny thing,
Feel confident. Notice the word feel. Yeah.
so you can, okay, in many, many ways, get that feeling of confidence to be able to just attempt, of course,
Yes.
to try to figure out why we are so afraid of this new tool. It's just a tool.
Yep.
You know, close that gap down about humanity and AI.
I go back to the fact that most people are not taught to be parents, not taught to be financial beings in this world, not taught to be So we had to learn this all through trial and error.
Yes. And experience. And I wish we can then document all these experiences,
We actually
into AI.
No, they're already there. Government Institute is great for relationships. There's a lot of great parenting advice. There's actually a lot of good information. Do you know how to prompt it? Yeah.
But this really brings me back to the very, very first conversation that we had on this topic, which is if God created us in his image, and if we created AI in our image, what do you think God would say? Would he be fearful of us taking over his job?
It's really funny that you're bringing this up. I remember the conversation, and my favorite way of describing this is, well, our idea of God is almighty and everything, right? So I wonder if AI feels that about us, but, but... I mean, we always make fun of the aliens looking at humans and what would they think of us? Okay, but I think first up is God will never be fearful because actually he'll be happy that he's out of a job because, it's a lot of responsibility. I think if you look at AI today, who's the one producing it? Big companies.
Okay.
Big faceless entities that are the ones who created all this. We talk about the CEOs and all these things, but to a normal person, do I know the AI myself? Did I create it myself? Or did someone else create it?
We are probably fearful of the persons who created it.
Yes. So that's actually what the real fear is. So if you look at it, right, it's not that AI is a thing that is going to take over our jobs. It's the people who created the AI are not going to help us understand this, use it well, but they're going to use it to try to take over our work.
The people who created and coded this
Yes.
don't behave the way that we behave.
And that's the real fear, right? That's a real deep down feeling that people have. It's not about AI itself. Do they trust the people who created the AI?
Where does that leave us? Because why this is such a huge topic right now is the fear that AI is going to be taking over our thinking, our processing, and our research.
So US just came up with some copyright guidelines, and we call it the sweat of the brow. In order for it to be copyrightable, there needs to be the sweat of the brow. That means AI-generated stuff, by right, is not copyrightable to you unless you put in effort. Prompting is not considered effort. You need to edit it afterwards, use it afterwards, for it to be copyrightable.
A lot of times it generates material that makes you sound very vanilla. It's supposed to make you sound
like most
else.
LinkedIn posts, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's generating from...
Same library. It's the same library. Yeah. Everybody's using the same library, same information, same everything.
So why would you want to just pump that out as your own?
Let's put it this way. When you're more focused on sounding right than caring about your own voice, at work,
right,
I need to give the right answer, not my answer.
We just went over this earlier on,
yes.
That it might not be right.
It doesn't matter. I need to sound right. I don't need to be right. So, perspectives, right? So, you have one perspective, there's only one right answer. That's what our education system tells us. There's only one way to build a bridge. There's only one way to right? So, therefore, right answer only. Do I want to change anything in the answer? So, I think it's a wonderful way of wrapping this concept up. The beauty of systems is skill. Yeah, because if there's only one right answer, we can guide everybody towards the same kind of direction. The reason why we do that is because then we can provide same standard of care and education for everyone. Yeah. That's our mindset, right? Of course, the execution becomes a little bit grayer. The beauty of things like GenAI is the personalization that comes afterwards. So again, we can use it as a tool or as the weapon against us. So, personalization with Gen AI means compute that now, thanks to DeepSeek, has reduced enough to perhaps empower each person. Yes. There's this wonderful non-profit called Kwai, KWAAI, that's all about getting personal devices with AI to empower everybody who's, from all kinds of backgrounds, including poverty. So that's that kind of mission where you're trying to empower everyone. But see, we have to understand that, again, I'm an interventionist. There's another reason why this is an interesting conversation for me. I'm an interventionist. I'm always thinking about what I can do to solve this problem. Most people are not trained to do so. Most people, because the problem is there, who can solve it for me? What can solve this problem for me? So when we go back to media, copyright, all these kind of different things, the problem is, are we speaking about it armed with legal knowledge, armed with knowledge of how Gen AI works, armed with the regulations that are in place, armed with the knowledge of how to utilize the equipment that we are now given to us? Yeah. But the effort of that is so much higher than, is higher than most of the things we've gone through in our lifetimes. Look at it, right? From the 90s till now, we had to learn how to use the internet, we had to learn how to use a smartphone, I still remember, like, in the 2010s, we had to learn how to use the smartphones. The number of older folks that were like, oh, now all of them play Pokemon Go on. It's one of the major reasons why a lot of the older folks started picking up the smartphone. Zoom calls during COVID was a very big reason why people picked up the smartphone too. So again, there was always fear because I could live my life as per normal. Why should I pick up this thing? Now, to be a creative professional today in media, in arts, in all these different areas, I have to learn all these other things that I've never touched before. Yeah. Is it very daunting?
It is.
Is it going to be a steep learning curve?
It is.
How many people are willing to redo their whole life and their whole learning cycle in their 40s? So again, this is the nature of where we are today. It is not that the technology is bad or good or evil or,
No, it is not you, it is just a tool.
And it's not that the regulations are trying to do anything that's harmful. In fact, in my regulations framework that we've produced at Center for AI Leadership, one of the major things that we realized is there were so many good recommendations within all the regulations. They were like, hey, these best practices are really, really good. How come nobody's reading them? And we realized nobody wants to read through the text. We are gathering all of them into one place so that it makes it easy for people to understand. But it's amazing how we miss out all these points.
Well, who actually looks at instructions anyway? I know we're supposed to, right? It's like, at least read it, even if you're not going to follow it, so that you know how things work. But by and large, a lot of us actually try to skip through those points because we also have this joy or this challenge of trying to figure out on your own through trial and error.
For sure.
Human nature.
Yes.
But I understand where you're coming from, especially with something or technology so new and so advanced.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people also don't know where to look. Like, there is so much noise, and a lot of it is coming across as marketing and sales, and people do not like to be sold to. Like, people want to learn, but they want to learn on their terms.
For sure. Which can be good and bad. But I think this is where, first up, MOOCs don't work, which is the massive online learning methodologies, because 8% retention. So when cohort learning works, live training works. I'm building open source tools for that reason, because now it's free. You can take this, you can create your curriculum, each person can build their own little base. And that's where it's really important. So that's why open source is so important. DeepSeek being open source was really important. MIT license, very important. My books all are MIT license. So when we talk about this, we're also looking at how can we provide the resources for other people? Again, I think like interventionist. How many people think like me?
Many times when I'm going through this on my own, I'm thinking like, okay, hit a roadblock, don't really know where to find this, don't really understand what this actually means, like terminology, through the roof. When I went to your AI bootcamp, I think that human interaction and that ability to just be in the same room as somebody that's willing to take the time to guide you.
Yeah. There was a person in the class that didn't have any coding background and got a lot of support from some of the guys. No. No, but the person was able to fly now because after the first week of support,
In 2 weeks. 1.5.
1.5. So I think this is where the environment is very important. So one thing about this is I learned to love music because of the community I was part of.
Yeah.
I was in the orchestra, I was in the jazz groups, I was in all the different groups. Therefore, I could learn to love the music. I could work to become world class in my field because I was surrounded by people who cared about it. In the US, in Silicon Valley, everybody knows AI. If you're a software engineer, you need to learn AI and have deployed it yourself. If not, you're not one of us. So I'm not saying there's judgment of other people. It's just, it's norm. It's the culture there. I think one of the hardest things is getting people to adopt things that are new and completely change to them. So like having the AI bootcamp was very important. And our goal is to make this, a licensing model to allow everyone else to build their own bootcamps using our materials. We are updating and everything. So what becomes relevant today is updating, being the human curation.
Oh my God, updating. It's moving so fast.
Yeah, it's fun. So
I know, but for the regular folk that really don't have the time because they're struggling to just keep up as it is.
okay, so let's talk about time. The amount of time savings you can have just using Gen AI is so much if you know what you're doing.
If you start getting your mind around it in the first place.
So I have this experience of helping a friend. He was studying philosophy, and he was going through a lot of text. And I asked him, why don't you learn speed reading? Because wouldn't that help you a lot? He went, yeah, but I tried for 2 weeks and it didn't work. I went, I tried for 6 months. But after that, it worked really well. He went, never went through my mind to try it non-stop because the first struggle is the biggest issue. So when we look at this, is our systems, again, social media, everything, dopamine hits. Are we designed for hard work? No. As in, our minds are not designed for hard work. Let's be honest here, right? Like, it's not designed for hard work. And if our environment just gives us everything we want, or everything we think we want, it's very hard for us to move. So as a part of this, I think this is why it's really important when we discuss this point that, again, it's a problem of us, not a problem of the AI.
Yes, I mean, in today's society and how, evolution and innovation has brought us to where we are today, to have the comforts of all of this, to be able to do this podcast for
maybe millions of people, maybe thousands of people, maybe hundreds. We don't know.
If even if we just help one person, I think that's enough. But the very nature of the fact that we have designed our life through innovation to make it so comfortable, we are now so pampered in this.
Double-edged sword.
But at the same time, we want things faster, and technology has given that to us faster. So pampered to not even want to get that far because the pain of that initial honeymoon period, it goes away really, really fast. It gets to this struggle point so quickly, and the minute we hit it, we're like, I'm not cut out for this. This is not for me, and then we quit.
The truth is, okay, so there's a futurist who say the illiterate of the future is the people who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? One of the biggest issues I noticed that most people think is they think they're empty vessels. This is the misnomer of education today. So we think that students are empty vessels and we're supposed to pour into them. So if you read Pedagogy of the Oppressed or Teaching to Transgress or any of these key books talking a lot about these systems, one of the biggest things that we need to realize is we come with our load. We come with our traumas from childhood. We come with our beliefs. We come with, which actually is the same. We actually come with all kinds of understanding of the world that we have. And the biggest reason why we're lazy is because we need to change these things. If we're not even aware of them, how do we change them? So we go back to this basis, right? If we can't be honest with ourselves and have intimacy, and I'm going back to my other conversation, if we don't have intimacy with ourselves and have emotional awareness, self-awareness, knowing our strengths, knowing our weaknesses, knowing our beliefs, knowing our thoughts, can I change them?
No, it all starts with self-awareness. And I've read countless books, and they all start with self-awareness, right? And that's the beauty of it. If you are trying to avoid that in the first place, then you're never going to get to any of these other points.
And that's why, for me, here's an opportunity, right? Gen AI is here to disrupt everything we believe in, disrupt everything we've known. Because we thought knowledge economy means high value, which means good money. Obviously, it was for a long period of time, but Gen AI is here to go, hey, Now, whatever you do, I can recreate in 5 seconds. So this is where, again, automations have never replaced brilliant people's work. It always replaces the warm bodies. And that's really the truth. If we are always improving ourselves and we are building people who are building themselves every day, this will solve the problem.
Would you like to help us to see a different way of looking at this fear? What about this AI replacing human routine tasks and how it's actually challenging us from decision making, problem solving, and creativity, thinking contextually to giving the prompts, instructions to AI?
So let's start with the grounds of self-awareness. Again, back to the self-awareness means, what are my strengths? What are my knowledges? What am I good at? How have I been successful in what I'm doing? What have I learned? What do I know? How can I share that with this Gen AI so that it gives me more information from its backlog of things that I don't have access to, such that I optimize what I do? Meanwhile, can I use this knowledge to translate it into another expertise and get Gen AI to bring out the expertise from me? Because, for example, if I'm really good at music, I can give me the analogy of music to Gen AI to ask it to teach me something new. I can use all these different mechanics to be able to figure out, oh, this is how I work. But you cannot do that until you know how you think. Until the day that you know how you think, that means I see this logical pattern and therefore I have this tendency and I have this thought patterns. And therefore I have the same reaction whenever that happens. Okay, how can I break that pattern or know that pattern well enough to know what to change and what to move? If you can't do that, you can't use Gen AI to that level of brilliance.
It's all about being creative, about questioning and how to use AI based on context, which is what I'm gathering, and based on giving it the perimeters to work within.
Right now, the chatbot interface of AI is not the best because it means unlimited window of all kinds of ways of using it. So then self-management and discipline becomes a really big part of this. Instead, if we build software around it and utilize it on the back end that generates all these different things for different contexts, that's where it works. Now the software engineering has been drastically changed by Gen AI because what used to take 6 months to create now takes 2 hours, sorry, not 2 days. 2 hours versus what used to take 6 months.
Nice.
It's amazing because then you can imagine how many tools we can build on top of Gen AI that manages it in such a way that other people can use it. So ideally, I want to create, a therapy app or this and that. And the best part about all of this is that once you know how to use this and you do it securely, you can do it for a lot of people and meaningfully. And that's where there needs to still be the bunch of leaders who start opening the ways first. Because why? I need to guide people by the features of an app, the flow of an app. I can use a chatbot just to do all of this work.
But this brings me back to the first question, which is if history is written by winners.
Yes.
And when you say this, it's just creating another app and it's redirecting and reframing a certain medium, industry, information, data points. Do we then trust that person that has created this app?
Create your own. So here comes the part, right? So there's
It's like talking about time here. Okay, I'm just kidding.
So that's the thing, right? Like with the democratization of creating of apps and all these kind of different things, you can find people you can trust. There will be a lot more people eventually as we do our AI bootcamp rollout and more people learn how to use this. Definitely more possible. Now people can create it even just as an individual person. Secondly, when we talk about this, is the earlier that we accept that winners write the stories, the earlier we can go, where can I find the other perspectives I'm looking for? Where can I look for the people who will do it differently? So one of the biggest things about this is the internet is a wonderful place where you can meet all kinds of people. And if we utilize it well, we still can find our tribe and the people on the other side that can help us figure out things for ourselves.
Now the internet is noisier than ever.
Yes.
However, that also means that there are a lot of people that are also creating the same things, but they're also creating it in their voice.
Yes.
And right now, more than ever, trying to identify who is authentic to you is very important.
Yeah.
Branding comes to mind.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm just scrunching my face because getting people to communicate and present themselves openly is another beast altogether.
Wow.
So as part of this, right, then learning to have an online avatar, be honest to yourself, having clear communication is yet the other part of the thing.
But we're not going to be able to identify who is authentic, who is well crafted and designed to hit a certain target audience, because now we can get Gen AI to just create that for us. And you're not even going to know whether the face that you're seeing down there is a real human being or not.
Which is true. So we go back to the maybe we are going back on premise, meaning in physical world, so that we can find people we can trust. But actually, to be honest, trust is just hard to get in general. So with that in mind, learn how to trust other people, or finding it within your current midst of people might be the only bet that you have.
I think then it comes back to that human connection in the first place, so that we can identify and trust and then understand ourselves a little bit better by seeing that mirror in another human being.
Yeah.
So that we can better use AI to train it how we want it to react.
Yep, we need to be better humans to use Gen AI.
Okay, that's it. If something hit you today, please don't keep it to yourself. Use it. Pass it on. But most of all, go make some noise.